Welcome to episode 2 of reading books online for a little audiobook library. Still on the folk and fairy tales. So today I decided to do the Brothers Grimm version of Sleeping Beauty, which they call Briar Rose. This was one of my favorites growing up. I was a big Cinderella kid, but I also really loved watching Sleeping Beauty. So it'll be interesting because I've read a couple different versions of it, but not to where it sticks in my head as Anyways, here we go. Long, long ago, there lived a king and a queen who said day after day, "Oh, if only we had a child," but none never came. Then one day, when the queen was sitting in her bath, a frog crawled out of the water and said to her, "You will get your wish. Before a year goes by, you will bring a daughter into the world." The frog's prediction came true. The queen gave birth to a baby girl who was so beautiful that the king couldn't get over his joy and decided to give a great feast. He invited not only his relatives, friends, and acquaintances, but also the wise women, for he wanted them to feel friendly toward his child. There were 13 wise women in his kingdom, but he only had 12 golden plates for them to eat from, so one of them had to stay home. The feast was celebrated in great splendor, and when it was over, the wise women gave the child their magic gifts. One gave virtue, the second beauty, the third wealth, and so on, until they had given everything a person could wish for in this world. When the 11th had spoken, the 13th suddenly stepped in. She had come to avenge herself for not having been invited, and without a word of greeting, without so much as looking at anyone, she cried out in a loud voice, "When she is 15, the princess will prick her finger on a spinning wheel and fall down dead." Then, without another word, she turned around and left the hall. Everyone was horror-stricken, but the 12th wise woman, who still had her wish to make, stepped forward, and since she couldn't undo the evil spell but only soften it, she said, "The princess will not die, but only fall into a deep 100-year sleep." The king, who wanted everyone to guard his beloved child against such a calamity, set out an order that every spindle in the whole kingdom should be destroyed. All the wise woman's wishes for the child came true. She grew to be so beautiful, so modest, so sweet-tempered and wise that no one who saw her could help but loving her. The day she turned 15, the king and the queen happened to be away from home, and she was left alone. She went all over the castle, examining room after room, and finally she came to an old tower. She climbed a narrow, winding staircase which led to a little door with a rusty key in the lock. She turned the key, the door sprang open, and there in a small room sat an old woman with a spindle, busily spinning her flax. "Good day, old woman," said the princess. "What are you doing?" "I'm spinning," said the old woman, nodding her head. "And what's the thing that twirls around so gaily?" the princess asked. With that, she took hold of the spindle and tried to spin, but no sooner had she touched it than the magic spell took effect and she pricked her finger. The moment she felt the prick, she fell down on the bed that was in the room, and a deep sleep came over her, and her sleep spread to the entire palace. The king and queen had just come home, and when they entered the great hall, they fell asleep, and the whole court with them. The horses fell asleep in the stables, the dogs in the courtyard, the pigeons on the roof, and the flies on the wall. Even the fire on the hearth stopped flaming and fell asleep, and the roast stopped crackling, and the cook, who was about to pull the kitchen boy's hair because he had done something wrong, let go and fell asleep. And the wind died down, and not a leaf stirred on the trees outside of the castle. All around the castle, a briar hedge began to grow. Each year, it grew higher until, in the end, it surrounded and covered the whole castle, and there was no trace of a castle to be seen, not even a flag on the roof. story of Briar Rose, as people called the beautiful sleeping princess, came to be told far and wide, and from time to time a prince tried to pass through the hedge into the castle. But none succeeded, for the briar bushes clung together as though they had hands. So the young men were caught and couldn't break loose, and died a pitiful death. After many years, another prince came to the country and heard an old man telling about the briar hedge that was said to conceal a castle where a beautiful princess named Briar Rose had been sleeping for 100 years, along with the king and the queen and their whole court. The old man had also heard from his grandfather that a number of princes had tried to pass through the briar hedge, and had got caught in it and died a pitiful death. Then the young man said, "I'm not afraid. I will go and see the beautiful Briar Rose." The good man did his best to dissuade him, but the prince wouldn't listen. It so happened that the 100 years had passed, and the day had come for Briar Rose to wake up. As the king's son approached the briar hedge, the briars turned into big, beautiful flowers, which opened of their own accord and let him through, then closed behind him to form a hedge again. In the courtyard he saw the horses and mottled hounds lying asleep, and on the roof pigeons were roosting with their heads under their wings. When he went into the castle, the flies were asleep on the wall. The cook in the kitchen was still holding out his hand as though to grab the kitchen boy, and the maid was sitting at the table with a black hen in front of her that needed plucking. Going farther, he saw the whole court asleep in the great hall, and on the day's bedside, the throne lay the king and queen. On he went, and everything was so still that he could hear himself breathe. At last he came to the tower and opened the door to the little room where Briar Rose was sleeping. There she lay, so beautiful that he couldn't stop looking at her. He bent down and kissed her. No sooner that his lips touched hers than Briar Rose opened her eyes, woke up, and smiled sweetly. They went downstairs together, and then the king and queen and the whole court woke up. They all looked at each other in amazement. The horses in the courtyard stood up and shook themselves. The hounds jumped to their feet and wagged their tails. The pigeons on the roof took their heads from under their wings, looked around, and flew off into the fields. The flies on the wall started crawling. The fire in the kitchen flamed up and cooked the meal. The roast began to crackle again. The cook boxed the kitchen boy's ears so hard he howled, and the maid plucked the chicken. The prince and Briar Rose were married in splendor, and they lived happily to the end of their lives. Okay, that was interesting. So most people at least, usually know the Disney version where it's True Love's kiss that wakes her up. Is an interesting note in here that it says, "It just so happened that the 100 years had passed and the day had come for Briar Rose to wake up." So the idea that it's True Love's kiss that woke her up this whole time has been a whole lie. This is why I love going and reading back on fairy tales. It just, it's so interesting, what the common idea is of them versus, what they actually say. It's, I don't know, just miscommunications and the history of, oral storytelling is just so interesting to me. Let me know what version you grew up with, because I think most people I know only know the Disney version, really. Or the Brothers Grimm's. I could also do a little comparison read sometime on this and the Peralt version. Just let me know in the comments. I really want to get a conversation going on this. Also, thoughts on the whole marriage right after waking up from a nap situation. Who would have thought that after, yeah, sure, let's just get married right after 100 years of sleeping. It's just, fairy tales will never fail to, be interesting. Anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day. Like the video if you want to see more of this. comment any books that you'd like me to do in the future. Like I said in the last video, I'm only gonna be trying to do books that are off the list, the one that public domain list. So if you have any favorites that are on that list, I've got a book of Edgar Poe's poems that I'm probably gonna read soon. I just want to do like a fairy tale from each of these, one fairy tale from each of the collection in here. So let's see, we've done Little Red and Briar Rose, Sleeping Beauty. Still have Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, Snow White, Rapunzel, Jack and the Beanstalk, The Ugly Duckling, Beauty and the Beast, East of the Sun, West of the Moon, The Frog King, The White Cat, The Brave Little Tailor, Molly Whuppie, Puss in Boots, The Death of Briar Wolf, Bluebeard, Rumpelstiltskin, The Fisherman and His Wife, Emperor's New Clothes, Toy Princess, The Happy Prince, man, and the list keeps going. I haven't even heard of some of these before. I'm really excited because this will like, we'll get to learn new tales together, hopefully. Yeah, so let me know what you guys would want to hear. Thank you so much for supporting me. I love you. Bye.